What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today what I want to do is talk about a very important issue that impacts the programmer community, and that's burnout. This is a tough topic to talk about because it impacts everyone differently, and it seems like some people never have the issue of burning out, no matter how hard they push themselves. I mean, you hear about Elon Musk and how he works 80 to 90 hours per week, and then you hear about people like David Goggins, who's able to do ultra marathons and who's able to push himself to the limits without having an issue. So basically in this video, what I want to do is cover what is burnout. Why does it seem like so many programmers face the issue of burnout? And what can we do to prevent it? And if you're going through it, how can you heal from it? I'm going to share my experiences, I'm going to share my tips, and why I believe people are able to overcome burnout on their own. So let's talk about it. All right, so since I want to share my experiences, what I'm going to do here is tell you a little bit about myself, my backstory, and I'm not going to go through my entire life because that could be a very long video, right? But basically what I want to share is my upbringing. When I went to high school, I went to a boarding high school, a military high school, New York Military Academy. And you can imagine it's a boarding school, so it definitely doesn't have the comforts of home. We had one TV in the entire barracks. We had about 70 other teenagers in that barracks, and we had a hierarchy system. It was a military school, so we had, students who were seniors and juniors were given rank. Sophomores were given rank as well. But the captains, the first captains, and the higher level officers of the school were predominantly juniors and seniors. So they got to pick what they wanted to watch, and if we didn't like it, tough luck. But military school was a good experience because it was able to instill discipline in me. It was able to give me a solid foundation. We got up every single day, early in the morning. We did our morning runs. We did our morning PT. And throughout the day, we had a very structured day. We didn't have that many distractions because everything was pretty much set to a schedule and we had to just do it. There was no choice. And that was 7 days a week. And one thing I liked about being in the military school is that physical activity was a major part of our day. And on top of the regular exercise we did for the training, I was also on the wrestling team. I did some boxing, and I even tried out for cross country, but it wasn't my strongest point. Now, jump forward to 2007, and that's the year I ran the New York City Marathon. Now, the interesting thing is, I'm not a real runner. I never really was. I wasn't really strong at running, but it was a challenge. I was put to the challenge. And I only had 6 months to prepare to run the New York City Marathon. And mind you, I wasn't running on a daily basis at that point. I was going to the gym, I was doing martial arts, I did Krav Maga. But in terms of long distance running, that's not something I would do. So I took this challenge up and I chose to run the New York City Marathon. And anybody who knows about how to prepare for a marathon, you need a little bit more than 6 months of training, even if you're a daily runner. If you're not doing long distance running, then you need some ample time. You need good time to prepare for it. And then I ran the marathon and I finished the marathon. Did I win the marathon? Obviously not. Thousands of people ended up finishing the marathon before I did. But in my mind, I won. And the reason is because I was able to do something that was extremely difficult with not enough preparation. So it took a lot of mental energy and mental strength in order to push through all the pain, the physical pain, because I got the shin splints, I got plantar fasciitis, I suffered from every ailment that a person will suffer from when trying to go from not running on a daily basis to running more miles in a day than they would typically do in a month. So I had a lot of physical pains. I iced up a lot, I used a lot of heat, I did a lot of stretching, but mostly I had to power through it mentally, because a lot of these battles, they end up starting in your brain. And that's where burnout stems from as well. And that's why I mentioned my foundation of being in the military school and then running and training for the New York City Marathon with very little training involved. Now, when it comes to programming, the issue is real. People burn out. We work very long hours. We're sitting in front of a computer all day, sometimes all night long. Even if you're working for a company, you might take work home, or you might end up on your work laptop, and you might just start working on your project that you're working on during the daytime. You might continue it during the nighttime. It seems like you never stop. And then, you have the issue of work-life balance. You have the issue of when do you get to hang out with your friends? When do you get to hang out with your family? When do you get to do things that you want to do? And then the stresses of timelines. Sometimes you got to get something done in a time frame that typically seems unfeasible. I remember one story about Steve Jobs, how he had these really unrealistic expectations of getting things done within an extremely fast time frame. And a lot of developers and engineers who worked with him said, but that's impossible. We cannot do it. And he said, make it possible, make it happen. So that stressful environment of constantly being put under pressure, forced to beat out, what typically was a previous expectation of what can be accomplished within a time frame. That stresses people. That puts a massive burden on your shoulders. You're doing something that nobody else has been able to do, and that's to complete a project that would typically take months and have to do it in a couple of days. And in that type of situation, you got to be careful because mistakes happen, especially if you're not getting enough sleep or if you're not getting enough coffee. And then in that situation, you're also not working out. You're not getting your physical fitness. You might not be eating properly. One of my biggest vices when it comes to food is pizza. I love pizza. I could eat pizza every single day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. In my book, in my mind, pizza combines all the major food groups. You have your vegetables with the tomato sauce, right? You have your dairy, your protein with the cheese. You have your carbohydrates with the bread. Pretty much all your macronutrients in that one slice of pizza. And yeah, pizza just tastes good. But if you're not eating properly, if you're not eating healthy, if you're not eating a balanced diet, and you're not getting physical activity, if you're not working out, on top of that, if you're not getting enough sleep, adequate sleep, and then you have the stresses of the workload of the day beating down on you. You have deadlines that creep up, and then you have meetings that take up time. You have coworkers that seem to want to chat all the time and not really get much stuff done. And then again, your personal life. All of that stuff combined, that can drain you. And then what happens if you work in the type of employment that maybe you have a conflict with what they're working on? It reminds me of an episode in Big Bang Theory where they're working on a project. I think it has to do something with acceleration or some new engine design or something like that. And they've been working on it for a long time. And these are very smart people. And then they go hang out one night. They go to a bar and they're having a conversation with one of Penny's friends. Penny's one of the other characters on the show. And her friend is not the smartest guy. They're talking about the project and he asked the question, would the military ever be interested in this type of technology? And then the scientists, what they say is, nah, it's not going to happen. And then he says something to the effect of, I thought you guys were the smart ones. And then they look at each other and then they realize they have that conflict. So you have all those other things that pile on, and then you might have that conflict as well. Or maybe you just don't have a good relationship with your project manager, or you have a tough relationship with the higher ups or other developers on your team. All of that stuff wears you down. So burnout is real. Burnout is tough. It can keep you down and it'll keep you there if you let it. Now for me, my experience is I've never really faced burnout to that level. What I've faced is exhaustion. I've faced times where I would be coding, programming, thinking, researching, working on a project, trying to figure something out, learning a new framework or a new library. And it's at that time that I felt exhausted, physically exhausted. Because again, not eating right, not exercising because there was no time for that, not getting enough sleep because you gotta squeeze in as much time as you can into trying to work on whatever it is you're working on. But I was able to recover because I was able to give myself time to recuperate and rejuvenate after finishing a project and after I was able to slow down a little bit. So I was able to rejuvenate, able to recuperate, and able to really focus on trying to get myself on track. So I've never had long-term burnout. And I guess that's the nature of the type of work I do. Everybody has different work, so I don't want to make it seem like I'm able to do X, Y, Z, and so should you. Everybody's different. Everybody has a different life situation. Everybody has a different story. Everybody has a different way that they work. Not everybody works for themselves. Not everybody works from home. And I know you're going to say, you work from home, you're comfortable, you're good. And yeah, it's comfortable working from home, but that in of itself can be stressful. Because again, the work-life balance, when you're working from home, you kind of seem like you're always working, you're always learning, you're always on the computer. You're not really focused on being home. You're focused on doing multiple things at the same time. And then you have the distractions. You have the TV, and then you have social media, then you have your email, then you have every single pop-up and notification that comes up on your cell phone. Hence why I turn my phone on Do Not Disturb throughout the day. And I only have very important calls that come through, because you can have a setting there on Do Not Disturb to allow different numbers to come through. And I designate times where I'll go in and I'll check my email. I'll designate times when I'll go on social media. I try to control that so that way I don't get distracted, because working from home, it seems like it's awesome, And at times it is, because you cut down on that travel time. And living in New York City, you know, it's traveling around can be kind of tough. Like right now, it's a little bit of traffic. I'm driving home. I just dropped off my son to school, so I'm on my way back to the office, my home office. But getting around town is not always easy. So working from home is kind of beneficial in the sense that you don't really have that travel time. So it goes into the pros and the cons. But my tips and what I recommend doing is, if you feel like you're getting to the point of burning out, whether you're learning how to code, learning how to program, or you've already been programming for years and you just feel like the weight of the world is on your shoulders, this is what I personally do. And again, it's different for everybody. But me, I get up at 4:30 in the morning. I go for a morning jog. Why do I do it at that time? Because that's the time I can do it. I don't do it at that time because I love it. You know, it's not an easy thing to do, especially when it gets really cold outside. You know, this morning it was about, like 32 degrees or something like that. The other day it felt like 27 degrees with the real feel. I mean, I live by the water, so you get that breeze coming in. So yeah, it's, you know, that's when I get up and I get moving and I start my day with the jog. I think that helps out a lot because, one, you know, it makes sure that I have time to actually do physical activity. That's a big thing. If you want to avoid burnout, you have to do something to change your mindset, change your workflow. For me, it works getting up that early in the morning to be able to start my day with a good run. You know, wakes me up, that cool air, especially now, you know, that's refreshing. Then I go home, I have breakfast, take a shower, you know, and then I start my day. But the fact that I'm able to do that physical activity, it does reduce stress. A lot of this stuff is about the stress load that you're having. And I think that, you know, some people are able to do these crazy long hours, like Elon Musk, 80 hours a week. David Goggins doing, you know, ultra marathons. Now, I did a marathon. Now, he does ultra marathons. Now, that's taking it to the next level. I mean, that's unbelievable. I can't even imagine doing, you know, an ultra marathon on my side. I can't. I don't think my knees would let me do it. But physical activity is extremely important. It helps you to overcome the burden, the stress, the workload that you're facing. Helps you to overcome the mental fatigue. So these people are able to do what they do because they've trained for it. Now, they didn't start being able to work 80, 90 hours a week or running 100 miles in a marathon. They had to build it up. They started off smaller and they got themselves prepared for it, mentally prepared and physically prepared. And on top of that, when you're working, when you're learning, when you're programming, you got to try to make sure that you control how your time flows. And you may not always be in full control, and that can lead to a lot of stress as well. But we pretty much all have a standardized day. It's very rare that a person has such a dynamic day that's different from day to day that they're unable to really prepare for what's to come the next day. We all have some type of system that we work in, whether that system is created by the company you work for, or if it's a system you develop because you're working on your own and you have to have a system. Because if you don't have a system, then you're going to end up suffering in the long term. So if you know you have a system, then you have to try to make sure that you control how that time flows. Again, this goes back to the eliminating distractions and prioritizing how you spend your day. Where's your focus going to during that day? And then there's always the issue of, what are you eating? Now, again, I love pizza. I love cheeseburgers. I like my bacon, egg, and cheese. So I'm not one of these health gurus that's having the absolute perfect diet. I'm not Brian Johnson, who has dietitians and nutritionists and doctors on call 24/7 monitoring and chefs at home making me the perfect meal. That is not me. But I try to offset some of the impact of having pizzas so often, having Chinese food so often, having cheeseburgers probably more than I should. Actually, I don't have them as much as I used to. But I try to offset it by having healthier stuff every now and then. I'll have a smoothie every now and then. I like apples, I like oranges, I like bananas, I like blueberries. So I'll have that. When it comes to my vegetables, you know, not the most exciting thing, right? But I do like spinach, I like kale, I like carrots, I like tomatoes, I like onions. So I try to incorporate as much of that as I can. So if you have a good diet, if you implement good exercise strategies, if you set aside time to just really reflect and to think, sometimes journaling can be very helpful. I always start and stop journaling myself. Not something I've been able to, keep up with. It's not a habit I've been able to fully develop. I've tried different methods of journaling, but that's supposed to be a good thing as well. It gives you a chance to reflect. And I think ultimately that's what causes burnout, when you don't get a time to really just let your brain rest, when you don't get a way or an avenue to reduce the stress when your body is going under such intense pressure that it feels like you just can't do anymore. And this is more on a long-term issue because, again, we're all going to get exhausted. We're all going to get tired. We're all going to feel fatigued. There's going to be the days and there's going to be the nights that you're going to stay up, what seems like 24 hours. I mean, in reality, you're not really going to have too many of those. I mean, maybe a handful in the 10 plus years I've been doing this, in the over a decade of doing what I do. But more realistically, you're going to face, a lot of 12-hour days, 13-hour days, or 15-hour days where you're just, in crisis mode and you have to get the project done. You have to get your part of the project completed. You may not be responsible for the whole thing, but your part has to be done, and it has to be done right because other people's jobs and other people's workflow depend on it. So those days are going to add up, but then you have to have the yin and the yang. You have to be able to, at the same time, be able to find time to wind down, to just relax. I code every day without fail. I mean, it's something that I just do, and I do it because I love it. I enjoy the whole entire process of coding, of programming, of debugging, and of learning, because I'm always learning something new. I do not know it all. As much as I think I know there's still so much more for me to learn. And that's another thing. If you truly don't enjoy what you're doing, that can lead to burnout significantly faster. If you love what you're doing, then it's not really work. I mean, there's a story of a swordsman, a Japanese swordsman who, for every day, for his entire life, would make these swords. And he never felt like he was burnt out. He was able to do what he wanted to do because he knew his purpose. And he truly enjoyed what it was that he was doing. So if you don't love what you're doing, that's when you might have a higher possibility of burning out. So if that's the case, then you really have to think about, why are you doing this? Maybe it's not for you. Now, don't make any drastic moves, just at the first sign of burnout. You might just be tired. And if that's the case, get some rest. But if you fundamentally, deep down inside, know that you really don't enjoy what you're doing, then that's the point that you might have to reconsider what you're doing. And the beauty of programming, the beauty of the tech field, is that sometimes you can pivot. Sometimes you can take on a new role. There's a lot of versatility, when it comes to being a programmer. But that requires you to really think about what your goals are, what you really want to accomplish. So basically, in order to avoid burnout or to heal from burnout, you have to try to find a semblance of balance. And, every day might not be a balanced day. But over a long stretch of time, you have to find some semblance of balance. You gotta, if you're gonna have a whole entire week or a whole month where you're working extremely hard and not really having much time to relax, then you have to factor that in. Then maybe you have to take a week off in order for you to recharge your batteries. If you can, try to get some physical activity in. Try to have a decent diet. I mean, nobody's perfect. And try to make sure you get some good sleep. And hopefully you have friends you can hang out with. And hopefully you have family that you enjoy hanging out with. And basically realize that burnout is real, but you can overcome it. It's not insurmountable. It's a challenge. Preventing it is the best thing. And if you've already gone so far that you feel burnt out, then recovering from it is what you have to focus on. At some point in our journeys, we've all felt pressure. We all feel pressure. It doesn't matter if you're just starting off or if you've been in this field for 30 plus years. The struggle is real, but you can definitely overcome it. All right, so hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit that notification icon. If you have any thoughts, comments, or suggestions, leave them down below. And as always, thanks for watching and happy coding.